right? And I hope you're having a good summer for the people who are in Europe, that we have people all around the world in general, right? So today we're going to be talking about change. When I was working in my book, Leading Exponential Change, currently now we have the second edition. I was developing some framework to help people change. One of the things I found, guys, is that in general, people try to learn framework like Scrum or a mindset like Agile, but unfortunately, there are no many books that teach you change frameworks. And we're going to try to see some. Most of the things we're going to see are ideas that I've been experimenting in different companies, and I wanted to share. I'm very open-minded, and I always say, guys, if there is anything that is useful, just use it, right? And then I wanted to start with the pyramid of change, and we're going to have a discussion here with Anna about what is needed for people to change, how people see change, right? And this is very, very important. Not everyone sees change in the same way, but we usually see that people go through 4 different steps, right? And in general, we talk about the first step, that is that you want things to be in the way you want, right? You don't want anyone to tell you what to do. And when you have a person, especially in a company, you don't know that person, you don't have any connection with that person, you really don't care about that person, right? And when you don't care about someone, probably the ideas, your brain starts filtering the ideas in a different way, and you're not going to like many of those ideas, right? So you usually want things as the way you usually have in mind. You think that your ideas are great, and probably you don't care about this other person. And this is kind of basic level. Doesn't mean we're going to see now these 4 different levels, but I want you just to understand that sometimes people start in the middle of this pyramid, sometimes people start at the bottom, sometimes they go through these 4 different steps, sometimes they don't, or stages, right? And what do you think about this, this basic level, Anna, the foundation of change, right? Have you seen anything like this?
Yeah, I think most of us have seen something like that. You know, those are usually the people that don't even want to discuss about change. And not just that, it's maybe even that they're so reluctant to think that anybody else has any input, that they could be, you know, like, you do it my way and there's no other way. It's like on that particular level, this is really sort of the worst possible mindset that you can have to even start talking about any type of change, any level of change.
And I think in this case, you can provide people with a lot of information, but it's not going to be a huge impact on that person changing their point of view. And we're going to see today how the brain works. I'm going to talk a little bit about neuroscience of change. And I think at this level, when you understand how the brain works, when a person thinks their ideas are the best ones, you can understand that also there is a sense of protection here. This person just want to, sometimes it's related to fear, right? What do you think, Anna? Have you seen that?
I think it's usually about fear. You know, I can imagine a person like this, you know, having the biggest fear in their lives when you mention flat structure. Like, you're taking away their power and everything they worked for, and, you know, everything that they've sort of fought for. They don't even want to discuss any type of change. So it's mostly about fear. Yeah, I mean, of course, there could be other reasons, but I think the fear would be the strongest.
So, and especially today we're gonna see which areas of the brain activate when a person is in such a state of mind. And I wanted also to share with you how to change that, right? If the person trusts the consultant making the changes, so they could probably move to a second stage, but otherwise it's going to be difficult. If you try to move this person too quickly, then you're going to get a lot of resistance. Also, people tend to fall in love with their own ideas. And when you fall in love, you take ownership of that, right? It's a great idea. I've been doing that for years. Why should I change? And then increases resistance. It's like the more you try to push that person for the change, the more resistant you get. And that person is going to start grouping with other people who share their own interest. And then at the end of the day, you have half of the company against you, right?
Yeah, but I think that's actually right for the next level. Could you reveal the next level?
Yes, we are. I don't like the proposed change, right? What do you think about this?
Yeah, so it's not that I don't like the change in general. I just don't like what you're proposing, because what we have done for years, it's been working for us. So why do we need to change? I understand that the company XYZ, they needed to do this change and it's fine for them. But why do we need it? For us, everything is working as it should, right? So it's sort of that kind of feel. It's not that now I have resistance to even talking about change. I can talk about change now, but really we're really good. So why do we need to change, you know?
Yes, and here we start moving the focus. So what happened is in the first level, I want thing to be, as I say, you don't jolly connect with the other person. And in this second level you move your feelings away, just take your feelings away, start connecting with the person and start identifying that this person is not the change. You have the change and you have this person. They are independent. So, and this is a crucial moment, because the more people think that the change is not connected to that person, the less feelings you're going to have connected to the change, right?
Yeah.
And the easier is to move that person in that direction, right? And there are also different techniques for this level that we are going to see. You want to add anything here, Anna?
Yeah, so in this level, it's more now we need to explain why the change is needed for our company, for this particular team, you know, for this particular situation. So this is how we push to the next stage. So giving the reasons why and motivating people through the actual values that we'll get by implementing the change that's coming.
And sure, for example, I want things to be, as I say, is like dominantly moved by fear. While
Yeah.
this second, I don't like the proposed change, you start thinking that, well, perhaps, you know, I don't like it, but we can start debating about that.
Exactly, yeah,
right?
yeah, yes.
And this is a turning point,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we move to the following one is, I don't understand why they change.
Yeah.
And this, when you don't understand, you move to a completely different mindset, because when you don't understand something, you are curious about knowing why, right? Maybe, yeah, maybe there are some parts of the change I would agree, other parts I don't. But then in this particular time, during change, you start clarifying the why, and you start clarifying the purpose for that person. And here we have many techniques like what is in it for me. So try to find what is important for that person and try to make sure they found this person feels motivated. Daniel Pink talked about, you know, different motivators, and you start talking about motivators for that person. And this is where you start engaging that person. And for example, something you do here is you start talking, taking recommendation, involving that person into the change. And then this why start moving into the following area that we're going to see now. Anna, you want to add anything with this level? Is anything you have
Yeah,
seen?
I think that this level is actually a good level to start. If the company has, as a company, if most of the employees are on this level, like I understand that the change is happening around us. I understand that we need to change in some way, on some level. But yeah, maybe I don't understand why. This is actually a good place to be because it gives you a lot of opportunities to actually talk about the change and clarify many things. So out of the three that we've seen so far, this is definitely a good place to be, and it's open for discussion. It's open for the possibility of change.
And then we move to the following one, which is great, which is, I don't understand why we must change. And this is moving from me as a person to a collective me, which is a team, right? So tell me why me and the people I respect and the people I spend time, we need to move that. And this is more working as in the purpose for teams, working agreement, vision, mission for teams, and I started moving in certain direction. But here, obviously leadership plays a big role in all of this, but in this one is when we try to move all this bunch of people in certain directions, so giving visibility of why we are doing that as a team, making sure everyone is involved, and we start moving as a team. And there is also some things that are happening here, like social pressure. Oh, if everyone going to go in that direction, I want to go, right? I always say when I'm in a country that I never been, and I'm somewhere and people start running, I start running. Yeah. So I don't ask why, right?
Yeah.
And this is the same, right?
Yeah, also this level of change is something that I, as a product manager, see on a daily basis. This is where I live in this part of of the change. It's why do we need this particular feature? Why are we building this? You know, what is the customer going to get out of this? What is the company going to get out of this? So this is all on this particular level, because yes, we as a company, we went through all these different stages, but now we as a team with this specific thing, why, you know, and why we. So, and that's it's actually a really operational thing, this level of change. And the product teams should live in this space, constantly always checking why, because that's a good thing. It always gives us the possibility to reevaluate things that we're doing and building and changing, you know. And so it's a good question. They shouldn't be just saying yes for the sake of saying yes. So they need to be checking the company and me as a product manager as well. But they are really close to the change, you know. So they're really, if they have these arguments that are really valid for them, they're likely to accept the change that's coming. So that's good.
And I think many managers, in general, they stop at the first level. And sometimes you see, and or sometimes I heard people say, no, you know, this person can't stand me. I don't have any connection. You know, she does not want to talk to me or whatever. And this is because you are in level 1 here. And then I'm going to talk about neuroscience of change. We try to solve this. Right? We try to see how it works, but it's related to fear. But in here, the first level, I want things to be, as I say, it's also about empathy, having empathy, right? Mm-hmm. Connecting with the person, right? And people stop there, and then they just, when they don't connect, we cannot connect with everyone, guys. But we can just make sure that we connect at least for work. And then the more we move higher in here, the closer we are to the change, right? And this is kind of something that I call healthy people. Healthy people tend to just follow these 4 levels. And it doesn't mean they people are multidimensional. Maybe for some change I'm in some level, and for other change I'm lower or higher, or they don't have to follow this 4 step, but in general, this is my observation of what happened.
It really depends on the context. So every one of us, for a different topic, we're not going to be on the same level. So if we're talking about product change, I'm really always on the upper part. But if we're talking about moving to a foreign country, I'm not sure if I would be in the upper part, you know, like it really depends on the topic that we're talking about. And each individual has the different level of accepting change depending on the context of the change.
Yes, and I think it's important to understand here that you can take this triangle and maybe you can start doing a brainstorming and saying, okay, if we have individuals in this level, come up with 5 or 10 techniques that you can use in different levels to try to help those people move to the following level, right?
Yeah.
And
we have a question,
yeah.
maybe just to answer, because it's related to what we're talking about. Could you please clarify the difference between the 3rd and 4th levels, because they look very similar?
Yes, so I understand that it's talking about I don't understand why they change, and I understand why we must change, right? These 2 levels, right? The 3rd and the 4th?
No. I want things to be, as I say, don't care about you. And the
Yes.
next one is I don't like the proposed change.
Okay. So yes. So I want things to be, as I say, in focus. I have a lot of fear and I don't connect with that person, right? And then I see the person and the change as the same thing. In the following level, the person is one thing and the change is another, right? Does ever happen to you that you have a problem with a friend, but you can split that person from the problem, right? So the 2nd level, you can put your feelings aside, and then one thing is a person, other thing is the change. When you are at the bottom of the pyramid, you see that person and the change as the same thing, right? I hope I clarified that.
Yeah, we have a follow-up the other way. I don't understand why the change, and I don't understand why we must change.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to explain that, Anna?
Yeah, okay, sure. So I don't understand why the change is just giving the sort of bigger picture and the reasons of why the change must happen in general for our company, you know. And this is sort of on a more systemic level than specifically for myself, you know. And then I don't understand why we must change as a team, you know, what needs to happen there. So I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, and that's correct. So I don't understand why the change is just for me. Is why should I change? And the other one is why we as a team should change, right? That's basically the difference. Imagine you're a family. You need to change, or your whole family needs to change, right?
Yeah,
then when your whole family needs to change, then there are other things that are happening, right? That you have to agree with other people to change. You have to make sure that everyone is on the same page. There is social pressure, but when it's just you, you do whatever you want and you think whatever you want. That's basically the thing, right?
Okay, I think we're good with the answer, so
Yeah.
we can continue, yeah.
And then we have narcissists, psychopaths, and disconnected people. If you want to see these people, don't generally follow this path of healthy people. If you want to know how narcissists, psychopaths, disconnected people behave during then you can take a look at this article, which is a hyperlink on the right-hand side, right? So let me go a little bit ahead and try to explain to you why we need to understand what happened with COVID and what happened to people, right? So in general, what we have seen in companies is that when there was a disruption, market disruption, for example, you were just about launching a new product and then another company launched a similar product, but all the things happen in your, during working time in your company. But now with COVID, what happened is that this change affected your private life also. So for example, people have to break their routine, right? People have to do things at home differently. Some people were working from home. It was affecting directly, you know, the routine during the day. During nighttime, people, that increased stress, the quarantine impacted on mental health. In some countries, we have seen people that have been for many months inside their place. We have to understand that human beings are sociable beings, so they need to talk to people, they need to hug people. One of the consultants told me that, called me, one of the person I do coaching called me to tell me that she finally hugged one person after 2 months, right? So this is the kind of thing that happens. And also we have something called ataraxia, which is when you are working from home, you become like a state of mental tranquility. So your brain has a little bit of different stress. You don't need to drive everywhere to go to your workplace. You are not in the office. So you start getting used to that, right? Different kind of stress. And then suddenly, from this state of mental tranquility, you need to move back to the office, go to the, take the car, go into traffic. So it's different kind of stress. So companies need to plan it very well. Perhaps people should start going back to the office, not straight away on Monday. So maybe a few days a week, first 2 days a week, then 3, and do it, you know, slowly, depending on how long it was. Every country is different for the quarantine. And then we have possible changes in the workplace that make people feel, you know, anxious about what's going to happen. You know, am I going to keep my job, my position? Is it going to change? And I have probably fears unknown. And that brings a kind of conscious and unconscious mental thoughts. And there are other aspects, you know, that emotional aspect. One day I'm happy because the government said that the COVID numbers went down, and the day after said the number went up, and then these emotional changes create a kind of roller coaster. Then also you have many family issues sometimes, alterations in physical health. For example, perhaps you used to do a lot of sport and now you can't do it. And then that affects your brain, right? So we have to assume that the people who left the office maybe 3 or 4 months ago are not the same one now. And I will try to explain to you why it's not the same, why the brain is different, and many of the techniques that maybe you were using before in the company, you have to be very careful here. Anna, do you want to add anything here? Is anything I'm missing, or you want to share?
No, I think you've covered everything. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that's good. So, and then let me try to explain just how the brain works quite briefly. I'm not going to go deep into that, but it's important that I try to see that people do not know. I talk about this in my book. What happens is that, first of all, we need to understand basic of the brain, right? And I'm going to take just a few minutes to explain. So at the front, you have the prefrontal cortex. That is basically the thinking brain. Anything that you do very elaborated, the prefrontal cortex has to do that. And it's kind of perspective and analytical reasoning part of the brain. When you are learning something new, for example, the prefrontal cortex uses a lot of oxygen to learn it, right? And the important thing here is that in order to try to do it, to understand, to learn, the prefrontal cortex uses plenty of oxygen. And that's why the first days you go to work in a new job, a new position, you feel very tired, or you start to learn how to drive your car and you feel very tired. And then, you come back home and you are exhausted, right? I imagine that happened to everyone, right? And then at the back, you have the basal ganglia, which is the hard drive. Once the process is automated, then it's moved to the back of the brain. and then the basal ganglia just repeat these activities, and it does not consume much oxygen, right? So everything which is automated is moving to the back, to the basal ganglia. And then you can be driving, talking to your friends, listening to the music, doing many things, because your brain just don't care, does not use a lot of oxygen. And in the company, when you become used to all the things, you do it easily. But what is important here is where we have the amygdala. The amygdala is what we call the smoke detector of the brain, and basically stores kind of emotional memories, something that happened to you that impacted you a lot. But the most important thing is that it ignites what we call the fight or flight mode, which is when something suddenly happens that you feel some fear. Imagine you open the door of your place and you suddenly find a lion, right? If it were the prefrontal cortex, your prefrontal cortex would take a long time to try to see, okay, which side is the lion? Can I fight with the lion? It is good or not? And you can try to evaluate that, but that's not happening, right? So what the amygdala does is, first of all, it releases oxytocin into your brain and puts you in a kind of state of alert, right? And prepares you for fighting, right? And some people can have effect on the body, like they become change the colors and the skin color. They become very aggressive. They prepare for fights. And the important thing here is that completely kind of switch off the prefrontal cortex, disable these higher brain centers, and shut down the perspective and the analytical reasoning, and produce a stress response, right? The fear and anxiety, preparing you for war, and increases the levels of cortisol. And when that happens, you become kind of monkey, right? You cannot think very well. So the more cortisol and oxytocin you have in your brain, the less reasonable you are, let's say in this way, right? So when it happens, well, obviously, if you have a lion and you open the door, you have a lion, then that's going to happen, but it's not something you can regularly see in your company. So then in companies, one of the highest activations of the amygdala happens when there is a change in status of prestige. That imagine I was a very high level in the company, and someone tells me that I'm gonna go lower, right? I'm a manager and someone tells me that I'm not a manager anymore. Or when things change quite quickly, right? Or if you have to face a challenge or something that I'm not gonna be able to finish, or for example, when you do excessive change workload, for example, you work so many hours, the amygdala starts releasing during so many weeks oxytocin, right? Or when there's high uncertainty. And why is this very important? Because one of the things I mentioned 1 minute ago is that when there is a change in status of prestige, or when there is a big challenge, right? And let me show you what happens. I will give you an example. So imagine you have this guy on the left-hand side is a developer or agile guy with very cool ideas. In fact, he looks cool. The guy on the left-hand side is called 5-0. It has a 5 on the t-shirt. And the girl on the right-hand side is his manager, and it's called Anna. Yeah, it's not related to you, Anna. It's a different Anna. Yeah? And then this guy said, Anna, I have an idea that I wanted to share with you, right? And then I said, oh, how cool. This guy is super cool. I always like the 5 ideas, right? They are always great, so I'm going to say yes. So then this guy said, what if we flatten out the hierarchies to be more agile? Or what if all the managers are servant leaders, for example, right? And let me tell you what happened here so you understand how the brain works. So anything with the subconscious brain thinks is a threat, then it's gonna take it as a drop in prestige. Yeah, it's like if you are losing prestige. And then this was discovered or confirmed by Antonio Gil in 2016 in Madrid. We knew that, but it was confirmed at some point. And it is that 110 milliseconds before your brain knows that something is happening, the amygdala is going to kidnap the thinking brain, and it's going to drop oxytocin, and it's going to create, convert you in a monkey, right? Because this change for you does not support the status or job security. And then the non-thinking brain, the monkey's brain, is going to influence the thought, the amygdala, and it's going to tell him, Anna, hey, be careful, maybe you're going to lose the job. Maybe, you know, you're not going to get all the perks, all the things you were getting. And then all this new negative thought, without Anna knowing, this new tale, new story, is going to be inserted there, put there in the conscious brain in 220 milliseconds. So the thinking brain of this lady, Anna, is going to get the new scenery without Anna being aware that she has been a strong influence, right? And then she's going to have a massive activation of the amygdala. And this is very important to understand because, as I said, many of the things that we see in companies, that we see all around the world, is about people having some subconscious fear. And when the amygdala is activating, we have seen a relationship between a resilience, so how people can recover from change, flexibility to change. So generally people, when there is a higher activation of the amygdala, people become less flexible to change, right? And then probably this lady is gonna take whatever is suggested after by this guy like a bad idea, right? So people with higher activation of the amygdala are less flexible to change. So with curfew and quarantine in many countries, with people being aware that maybe they could lose their jobs, everyone has a higher activation of the amygdala and oxytocin. So maybe it's a good time to have in mind that if you want to do a very aggressive change, you need to involve that people. You need to make sure that by involving these people, you give some information, visibility, involvement into the change, because otherwise people with higher levels of activation in the amygdala as a result of everything that happened in the last few months, they are not going to feel comfortable with whatever you propose. Okay, do you have any question here, Anna?
Here we have a question from our participants. You mentioned psychological safety, how to start enable change in an organization. So over 50 agile teams, Scrum Kanban, where dev teams, almost all external, have the power to rip off an Scrum Master or product owner head.
Okay, so
I wanted explanation.
So I wanted to delay this because I'm gonna present a framework in the next slide, and then let's see. Maybe I will not answer your question if you don't. I haven't answered your question. You tell me again. You reframe the question, and we try to answer that, right? Because I'm gonna first give a very specific definition for psychological health. Okay. So let's try to focus on, I put you on the parking lot, the question for a second. Let me tell you what is very important for you to know and how we connect this with psychological health and with also business agility, right? So let's start from the very basic. If you have a product, you need to make sure that you know all the features for that product, in which quadrant they are, right? And there are 4 things that a feature can do. Any feature from any product, any company around the world, any service. So the first one is increase revenue, like increasing sales to new or existing customers, delighting or disrupting to increase the market share or the size, right? So we try to make more money, super easy, right? The second quadrant is protect revenue. This is basically trying to improvement that if you have certain market share, or number of clients or customers, you try to protect them, right? You try to keep them and you try to protect them and you try to cuddle them to make sure they are happy with your product, right? This is different than increasing revenue. So here the focus is protect whatever you got. Then the third one is to avoid cost. This is cost that you are not incurring at the moment, but you might do in the future. And in here, for example, you can have, next month something is happening, and then you do something so you can avoid those costs, or you can do some automation to avoid the cost in the future, or anything that that is gonna make sure that you know how much you're gonna spend or which many costs you're gonna have. You try to avoid cost at any cost, right? And then the last one is reduce cost. That is cost that you are currently incurring, but can be reduced, right? More efficiency, improve margin or contribution. And here, the typical focus for some company is just to reduce the number of employees, right? Or to find cheaper product. And here, when we do it in Agile, instead of reducing them, yes, we can reduce the number of employees, but we have to make sure that when we reduce the number of employees, we do not destroy the knowledge created by those employees. For example, many companies say, oh, we're paying $1 million to this team, let's just cut this team and then, just fire them and we see how to redo it. And then they discover when they fire that team that this team had a lot of knowledge, right? And then it's even more expensive. So cutting costs, this should also include, in Agile, we try to see this shared knowledge created by the team, and we carefully and strategically see if that is a good idea. So what I came up some years ago, and I explained this in my book, is that whatever you do, you need to be agile with these four things, right? Whatever you do in a product has to be in any of these four quadrants. But you need to understand first what is business agility. Business agility for me is the capacity for the company to constantly adapt to the new market conditions to create a competitive advantage. But the key here for any company, what companies are forgetting is the green part here, without negatively impacting on its organizational health. So any feature for any product, any action I will take in the company, it has to show that it's going to keep the organizational health on the same level or it's going to increase it. Anything which is going to deteriorate organizational health, what I propose is to try to do some brainstorming and come up with any other idea. For example, if we can increase revenue, right? And we say, okay, to increase revenue, I'm going to finish this product and I will, it's just a new product that I've been working for a long time. And then I'm going to make people work 12 hours a day, right? So what's going to happen with this? Yes, you increase revenue, but this is short term and also it's going to deteriorate your organizational health. So the extra question you're going to do for any of these four quadrants is this feature or this action or whatever process or whatever you're doing here in any of the four quadrants, is it going to increase organizational health? Or is it going to keep it on the same level, or is it going to reduce it? And if you reduce it, I shall try to reframe the question, right? You want to mention anything here, Anna?
This is actually excellent point. I think that most of the companies that at least I have worked for are struggling with this. First, they're struggling to define the business value in the way that you presented it here. And then the other part is they sometimes forget to take into consideration the organizational health. So some of the changes are actually endangering the organizational health without being intentional about that. It's just that it's sort of an afterthought. Which is, of course, the big risk that the company is then taking.
And especially what we mentioned before, right, that people are coming from COVID, bigger activation of the amygdala, etc., right? And I want to give a good definition for organizational health, which is psychological safety plus creation of sustainable business value in perpetuity, right? And this is something that you cannot achieve if you don't have high organizational health, or you don't focus on things that are not going to affect negatively organizational health. So for me, this is a definition. I came up with this business agility definition a long time ago, and I think it's a game changer for companies. So for everything you do, you ask how first. What I see is many product owners have no idea, and this is something I recommend. Just try to challenge product owners or anyone in the company with a new feature to think in which quadrant it's going to be. Then to think which quadrant is more important, maybe more important the first or second, and try to prioritize this quadrant for each product or whatever you do in the company, and then think in terms of organizational health, right? And this is a good mental exercise. Most companies, when they do that, they can come up with a certain business value definition. As Anna said, this is something we'll consult and we see everywhere, that companies first have no idea of why they are doing something which is going to protect revenue first and then increase revenue after, or they have no idea about this quadrant. And second, they cannot measure it. So I've seen so many companies around the globe where you ask, okay, so these two features, which one has a major contribution to business value? Which one provides more business value? And people confuse effort with business value, which is not the same, right? It can be something very small, very easy to do, with very high business value for the company, right? And this framework, I think, is a good idea for you to start using. So do we have any question at the moment from anyone who wants to ask about this? Do you think
no,
we can?
we don't have anything at the moment for this.
No, okay. So from tomorrow you can start thinking in terms of, start challenging people.
It's all clear, everybody's going to implement it.
Well, at least if you don't implement, ask the question, start asking people, okay, so that this feature is not clear for me. Is it going to increase revenue, protect, reduce cost, or avoid cost? And probably they fire you because they think this person lost in translation, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is something very important to have in mind, right? And this is also what happened here is that if you don't have good organizational health, there are so many things that even if you have very good ideas, you're not going to be able to implement, right? So let's move forward. So what we usually do with this is you create anything you are doing in the company, you create this backlog, but you know where they are and you also know how it's going to impact the organization, right? And especially if you're a manager or a scrum master or something in charge of change or something curious about how to improve things in the company, you need to understand where in the product is and then understand how it impacts, right? And then, Anna, you want to talk about organizational health, some examples here?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, the organizational health, it's more like the health on the company level, but I think what we see on a operational level, we talk very often about the team health. So the aspects are the same because we're talking about the people and the cooperation that needs to happen in order to be able to do business. So I think most of the people here on the call are rather familiar with this topic. We're now just talking on the level of company rather than the individual teams. But it's nothing, it shouldn't be nothing, really nothing new. So yeah, in order to keep the organizational health, we need to have the minimum change that we can do in continuity so that it's not a big impact, but it's happening all the time. So we're flexible and we accept it easily. We have the self-organized team, which is a sort of precondition to be agile in the first place. seeing work as a learning problem rather than an execution problem. So yeah, we just need to think about everything that we do as a sort of learning curve for everybody involved, rather than the strict plan that everybody needs to take action about. Use conflicts as a positive tool. Yeah, so how do we, what have we learned? How can we thrive on this? What do we need to change in order to either prevent this or to manage it better? You know, so information and knowledge is shared, of course, because if you want to be and having this constant learning curve, you need to share it. If you want to have self-organized teams, everybody in the team needs to have a certain level of knowledge of different things, and so on. Delegation in a natural manner. Again, this sort of addresses this self-organized teams, I think. So,
and I think that, Anna, I think it's important that sometimes, very little action, like for example, if you see leaders, when they replace guilt by curiosity, instead of going to the team and say, I think you should have finished it, then they go there and they ask, oh, guys, what happened here? Just by changing the tone and changing the question, you can see a massive change in organizational health, right?
Yeah, so I can see that you're almost at the finish line. So if what would have taken to just get you over the finish line? What would be that extra oomph that you needed to push through? So maybe we can have that the next time. So just to keep asking questions and stay open, rather than to be a sort of command mode. That's more or less what we're talking about. But yeah, I think that for this section, we more or less are aware what is the sort of healthy organization. Yeah, what needs to happen, or rather what needs to not happen.
Okay, so I'm going to move to the next one, which is where we talk just something we talked today, which is we have the product backlog, and then, first trying to make sure it's in this quadrant, and then trying also to make sure that how it's going to improve organizational health. And I'm going to move quickly. I'm going to move from the product now to the change, how we do change, right? But I want to focus a little bit on giving some clarity of what business agility is for me, and this is what the theory I explain in the book, which is basically, I believe that this model simplifies, how people think of changing in a company. What I've seen for many years is that people think agility is just as something related to IT, to software, and then when they try to expand some change to the rest of the organization, they struggle with that. So I came up with a model that I think hopefully is going to help you seeing changes in a different way. I'm going to start promoting a healthier change into your organization as a manager, scrum master, or anyone who want to contribute in a positive way to the company, right? So I believe that there are 5 levels of agility, not just one. And the first level is what we call mental agility. Mental agility is the capacity for a person to be able to see a problem from different perspectives and feel comfortable with that. And I wanted to stop here for a second to run a quick exercise with you. So if you can grab a pen and a piece of paper, right? I'm gonna give you a few seconds. I'll try to see if you can grab a pen and a piece of paper from somewhere. And this is, you are not gonna need to share this with me, so you feel free to write whatever you want, right? So the first thing I want is you take that pen and you write the name of a person you admire. A person who is like, for you, is your lighthouse, right? Could be a friend, could be a couple, could be someone from the TV, could be someone that inspires you. Excellent person. You like everything about that person, right? And then I want you to write 3 things you like about that person. I'm gonna give you a few seconds. So write the name of that person and write now 3 things you like about that person. So now I want you to go even deeper. Think of any value or principle you like about that person that influence you in a positive way. Let's write 2 values, right? That person has that make you feel like that person is like your lighthouse. Yes, 2 values. Hopefully you came up with 2 values, right? Then I want you to put a line, just a vertical line, and write on the other side the name of a person you cannot stand, cannot even share anything with that person, right? Could be a politician, could be someone you met at some point in your life. I want you to write the name of that person. Remember, you're not going to share anything with me. Hopefully you came up. Someone you don't share values, yeah? Any value with that person. For example, I love animals. I couldn't, feel connected to a person who's hitting an animal, for example, right? And then I want you to write 3 things from that person you don't like. So remember, 3 things you don't like at all from that person. That makes you feel very uncomfortable. And 2 values of that person that this person holds, this person have, and you can, it's like me. If I'm with a person who hates animals, I cannot feel like connection with that person, right? So 2 values that person has, and you hate those values, right? Are not connected to you, it's not your cup of tea. And note down those 2 values. So hopefully you got these 2 values, yes? I'm gonna give you 20 more seconds. I'm gonna drink some water. Okay, so what's gonna happen is, imagine you finish this webinar and then you go to bed, and tomorrow when you wake up, you are that person, but not the person you like, but the person you cannot stand. You wake up in the morning. So the first thing you're gonna do in the morning is you're gonna have these 2 values. I want you to embrace these 2 values. So for example, if that person hates animals, now you hate animals. Imagine that you're going every day, walking down the street and trying to find cats and hitting them, right? Imagine these two values a person has. Embrace them. You are that person now. I don't want you to just look like that person. I want you to feel those, and I want you to feel that those two values are right. Now these two values are right. Now these two values you didn't like are right. So I want you to come up with a new mindset that tell you that why these two values are right. Yes? Can you feel that? If that person does something you don't like, you are going to do it and you'll love it. Imagine a day of that person doing all these things you don't like, and you love doing that, right? You enjoy it. Okay, I'm going to rescue you, okay? That was a nightmare, right? Let's come back to normal. How did you feel? Can you give me some feedback?
Yeah, you can write in the chat.
Yes. What happened? Did you feel comfortable? You didn't? What happened to you?
We have nothing in the chat.
No.
So they felt nothing. Empty.
So what happened is obviously you were having some feelings, right? Were the feelings good or not?
Okay, we have some comments. Wait.
Yes.
Powerless. Yes, good. What else?
Mm-hmm.
Taking perspective, starting to understand it. Anxious.
Anxious. Okay, interesting. Anxious. Yes.
Good. Anything else maybe? Yeah, it seems that's it. Yeah.
So.
Oh, exhausted. Okay.
Exhausted. Yes, you are trying to make an effort to try to be someone you are not, who has different values, right? Your brain is trying to fight against you becoming something you don't like to be, right? And probably your amygdala is activating. You feel very uncomfortable. Some people can feel nervous, anxious, right? You can maybe feel like something is wrong. Your brain does not understand it. The amygdala starts releasing some oxytocin. And this is what we call reframing, right? So it's a very aggressive activity. In my book, I explain how to do it. The more we do it, the more mental flexible you become. And I teach a couple of techniques. And then what happens is your neurons start connecting in different ways, right? Doesn't mean you're going to be that person. It means that you start feeling comfortable about embracing other values, other points of view, even you know that you don't like them. And that increases your neuroplasticity, how the brain see different perspectives and your neurons connect, and then increase the mental agility, right? Mental agility, I believe that you cannot have a company which is very flexible if people are not flexible in the company. So I generally work and teach with CEOs and other people from all around the world, teaching techniques of how to increase neuroplasticity, how to see things. And we make people feel very uncomfortable, right? Imagine in history, there were some horrible people making wars everywhere. And I ask you to be like one of them, right? So, and this feeling you probably had is the same feeling that people have when you are proposing a change in the company, because it's the same activation of the brain or similar, right? Does it make sense? So without mental agility, there is not much possibility that you're gonna be changing and you are gonna be adapting and having resilience. The second level is what we call social agility, which is basically when we have social agility is how people connect in the company, right? In the physical or virtual environment, and how they connect when things are changing, right? And they support each other. The third level is that we call outcomes agility, which is basically if the company change direction and change the strategy and move from one side. Imagine today we are producing something and we have a budget and suddenly everything changes and the flow changes. How I feel with these outcomes changing, right? If we feel comfortable. Otherwise, we need to have certain techniques for this level of agility. Then we have a structural agility, which is how the processes support the people in the company, right? And then the rewards, the roles, etc. And then it means that if I'm changing something, if you want people to feel comfortable, then you need to involve that people, right? That also diminishes the activation of the amygdala because people are involved. And this is a structural agility, how the processes in the company, the roles, or whatever structure you have in the company is going to support you changing, right? And finally, what we have is technical agility, what people call agile, right? And these ones are the 5 different levels of agility. So what we're going to do with this is, and in order to have in order to have resilience for people feel comfortable, you need to make sure that if you make a change in the company, in technical agility, you also consider that you're going to need the right structures. You also need to make sure that people feel supported, and you also need people having mental agility. So you cut the cake in a vertical way, right? You don't just make a change. For example, if you're going to change a procedure, structural agility, you also need to make sure or aware of the other levels of the organization. It's like every time you make a change, you cut the cake vertically, right? Anna, do you want to mention something here?
Well, yeah, I think you covered most of it. The thing is, whenever we're doing the improvements, whether it's sort of organizational or within a team, it's good to think about the vertical slice. You know, it could happen that at some point you will discover that you do need change on maybe all the levels or on most of the levels. You know, what we tend to do is we keep on the technical agility, you know, or maybe structural, but very rarely do we think about the outcomes and the social agility and the mental agility. So especially in the companies that have already implemented the Scrum, Kanban, or any other agile framework, they tend to sort of goes without saying that everybody has mental agility and that we as a company have the social agility, which is not necessarily so. Especially if you have a rather young company, for instance, that has a lot of people that just came to it. When I say young, I don't mean the age of the people, rather that the company grew recently and they have a lot of new employees. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's on the same level. So you need to take care of all the aspects. So yeah, of course, I agree with with what you.
And I think it's important that you consider that for me the foundation of this cake is mental agility, right? If people are very strict, you can implement whatever you want in the company, but unless you work for the government, that you are a monopoly, then you're not going to be very successful in the long term, right? And this is very important to consider. For example, social agility. You are creating a product and you have the managers in one level of the building and then the developers in another level of the building. That's not going to work very well. People are not going to connect well. You know, what is the agility? You know, I remember one company where people have to take the lift to go down, talk to managers or up or whatever. And that's not going to work. And I've seen that. We have seen that kind of things everywhere in the world, right?
Yeah, in one of the previous companies where I worked, actually managers were sitting alongside with the people they're working with and managing. So they weren't sort of isolated, but they were in the mix along with everybody else. So they can actually feel the level of social agility and the clarity of the outcomes or not, and react and respond in time and in proper way. Even the mental agility could be felt at sometimes depending on who is within a team.
And there are so many things you can do. For example, in one company where people were, well, not many people, but most, let's say most of people were not very flexible. Then I asked them just to do one thing, just to change one micro habit, a small habit. Instead of saying no when they couldn't be able to do something, I asked them to ask one question. Can you tell me more about why you need that? Right? And that changed the conversation. So sometimes we're looking for the minimum change to produce the highest impact in the company. And this is something I talk in the book also, why you want to do something massive if maybe you have the same impact with something very small, right? And then you have the organizational improvement backlog. Hopefully you have it in your company. And then you use these 5 levels of agility. And you remember that you also have the cake. That it's a cake, it's a chocolate cake, right? And then you ask, is this item improve organizational health?
Yeah,
right?
we have a couple of comments in the chat. I believe Boris Podboy was just commenting on the feelings after the exercise. So he said, understanding it with urge to change. And then we have Pankaj. I love the exercise, but I have to drop off. It's very late in India. Would love to do it in the day. The recording would help. Thanks, Eric and Anna.
Okay, great. I could to mention that we have approximately 9 more minutes for this presentation. And then you guys, if you have any question, we answer, and we're gonna try to wrap up this. I hope you are learning something, right? So then you're gonna have something like this, a product backlog where you're talking about the product, and then some organizational improvement backlog, which is gonna use both use or high organizational health, and they are connected. And this is very important that you can separate one from the other, but then both increase organizational health. Do we have any question about this? Anna?
No, not for me. I'm checking the chat, but it seems that we don't have anything at the moment.
Okay, so then I will talk about 2 recommendations that I generally, in companies where there is high levels of organizational health, I generally, so recommend that they see where people are in terms of the triangle. I try to understand, and they have into mind that enterprise agility includes these 5 levels. And this is that when you understand this, I think that probably your mindset changes. You start thinking, hopefully in a different way, right? And that's the aim. But I want to do today is give you just 2 more recommendations, right? Which is here. First, as we are in time of COVID and many people are working from home, I wanted to just mention that we have a hybrid situation, and that's been challenging for many people. Most of the companies are using Skype or are using Zoom to do remote work. But for me, this is something that companies should not do. This is not wrong, but there are better alternatives. What we need to do is what I call rebuild the social environment. Make sure these people at home feel as if they were in the office. And we have here 4 things we need to do. Is the first thing is that when you have a normal in an office, when you're in the office, you usually pay attention to whatever is changing around. You usually have public information radiator, which is information. You have boards, or you have anything on the wall, so you can see this information, right? Then the second one is you can see this visible interaction from people people talking, people moving. For example, if you see that some manager is talking to one person, you know that probably trying to guess what is happening. Then you have recognition of visual facial expressions. For example, imagine that a member of your team is talking to someone and come very happy, you know that was successful with someone. So our brain is detecting all this information from the environment plus the actions that are happening, and your brain is trying to recognize it. When we do Skype, we lose all this, right? We see the face of the other person. And then there is a research that shows that when you work in a company, you do Skype, or we just see the face, our brain are constantly trying to recreate this and spending a lot of energy. So that is where you finish really tired after the Skype, right? Or Skype or any other tool. This is what I propose. There are a couple of tools. One is Coco, but there are more. With basically you recreate the environment, your offices, and you have basically kind of little cartoon, and you can move in between the offices, and then you can see how people are moving. In a company a few years ago, we put cameras in all the rooms, so people can jump into the room and can see who is there, who is not. So remote or local people look like exactly the same, and you have monitors around. And then we also can have panels with information, and you can click there and see them, and then you can make notes. So we are breaking the barriers here and try to recreate the social environment, right? If you see that everyone is moving to a room, then you want to see what's happening, right? And you move your icon, your little cartoon to that room. So we need to reconstruct first, rebuild this social environment, right? And there is a connection between the value stream, how you produce the value, and the physical space, right? If you are producing a product, you should have all these people close. You can have two people in one level, other people down, and other people in another country. And then this helps a lot, right? And that's improved the communication between people. We also put the focus on improving communities of practice. I could talk a lot about that, but I'm not gonna get it too long here. Also, teams should be able to balance their skills. Now, maybe with COVID, some of the teams do not have people or less people in their teams, or different people, or some other companies are not available. So the teams need to be able to take their own decisions about what is missing and how can I solve it. So we couldn't overload the manager trying to do that. This is my first recommendation. And the second is to establish a rapid response room, which is a room, physical room, and you can also put Sococo if you want, where you have basically all the information of everything which is happening in the market, right? Everything that is happening in the market at the moment. Everyone can go there in that room. I recommend not having any chairs or any tables, so people are standing there. They can see what's happening in the market with the product, with everything. Everyone can go. There are not hierarchies. There are no hierarchies with this. Everyone can go there. For example, we can have one person from IT, one person from marketing, finance, meeting there. They go there and say, okay, let's see what happened in the market. Let's see, who's releasing this product from another company, and let's make a decision. And they take that decision. If that decision impacts teams, they call the teams. They cancel any sprint if they are using a Scrum. They change the backlog and they go back to work, right? So the idea of this is that they create new hypotheses that they want to test. Anyone can go into that room, and then anyone impacted should into that room. This room has a lot of information, and then the idea is that you try new things in the market, but you decide day by day in Scrum or any other framework, we need to wait 2 weeks. And here we make the decision. So it's very important we establish a rapid response room, right? And then you refine and improve. This room you can start making some improvement if that worked for you. So there is flat structure, and it's a way of making sure that we shorten the way of the sprint, or we make every feedback loop smaller, right? But in order to accelerate something and change something, you need good organizational health. Otherwise, when things start changing, people are not going to feel comfortable with the change, right? Do you want to add anything here, Anna?
I actually have a good example for this. We had a similar situation now due to Corona, because we started working remotely from March. And in March, I'm currently working in the gaming company. And from in March and then in April, we saw a really rapid change in the market within gaming industry, because everybody was sitting at home. They didn't have much to do. So what they did is they played games. And they especially played casual games. And this is where we are. This is our market. And we, within 2 meetings actually, because we had this sort of, we didn't make it a room, but we had a sort of a war group. We changed our product backlog completely, and we changed our outcomes, or rather goals for the outcomes. And yeah, within this quarter, we have seen really a drastic change in the revenue due to the changes we made. And that was really amazing, because we could actually see this working right there, you know.
Yes, and that's cool, and that requires that people trust each other. Otherwise, you put a rapid response room, and then they say, "Well, these crazy people are pushing me to change. I don't want to change." And then we're in the pyramid at the bottom, guys. Okay, and then you know what to do now, right? So this is basically what we have today to present. So we're gonna have a few minutes for questions, and then we're gonna wrap up this webinar, and we're gonna make it available. If you enjoy it, please share the hyperlink with this webinar into your social network. That is gonna help other people too.
Do we have some questions? Because we don't have anything new in the chat. So if you have anything, please just write it so that we can see.
In the meantime, you also have my email in case you want to contact me.
Yeah, just okay, we have a comment from Bola. Just want to say a big thank you for the session. I enjoyed it.
And I think Bola bought my book recently.
You have a pen. Okay, good. Yeah, this recording is going to be available on the YouTube channel of Serbia Product Community. So I'm going to share it on our social networks as well as my profile. Okay, it seems that we don't have any questions.
They were perplexed after the dynamic.
Oh no, we have another comment from Bola. I was actually looking for that 30 minutes free coaching, but now I can't get it.
Yeah, I said, if you don't learn anything new, then I give you 1 hour of free coaching worth in $900.
Oh, you didn't say that. You see, maybe we can have some other candidates here. Okay, cool. Yeah,
okay,
so
guys.
It seems that we don't have any questions, so we can definitely wrap up. Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming today and for your time. I hope to see you soon. If you have any questions, just send me an email, and then don't forget to share with the community this video. And thank you, Anna, for hosting it.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks everybody for participating, and thank you, Eric, for sharing this. It was really great. So yeah, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and see you soon. Yes.